I'm Lea Lane, an award-winning travel writer and author of Places I Remember, Tales, Truths, Delights from 100 Countries. On this podcast, we share conversations with travelers about fascinating destinations and memorable experiences around the world. On this episode, we'll be talking about ways to save money when you travel with one of America's best-known financial experts, Jean Chatzky. Jean is the founder and CEO of HerMoney.com and Finance Fix. She's the host of the podcast Her Money with Jean Chatzky. She was the financial editor of NBC Today for 25 years and the financial ambassador for AARP. A New York Times and Wall Street Journal bestselling author, her latest book is Women with Money, the judgment-free guide to creating the joyful, less stressed, purposeful, and yes, rich life you deserve. Wow, we're so delighted to have you share your expertise and experiences with us. Welcome, Jean.
Oh, thanks, Leah. Thanks for having me.
I don't know if you remember, we first met about 20 years ago in Westchester County, New York. We were both on a panel about women making a difference, and you certainly have.
Oh,
I remember that one of the other panelists was Eileen Fisher, and I was so excited because I was wearing one of her designs. So that I will remember.
Yeah, no, I remember that. I remember that as well. And I wasn't sure if we met there originally or if we met through your son, Randall, who has been a friend of mine since we both started as fact checkers at Forbes magazine 30 years ago within a week of each other.
Yeah, I did know you then as well. So I've been very lucky in that. Now, in the second part of our conversation, we'll be talking about some of your personal travels. But in this first part, let's talk about ways that travelers can save money. I read, as of January 2021, the average person will spend between $1,800 and $2,500 on a one-week vacation. That's estimating $210 to $310 a day for hotel and food, and just under $400 for airfare. It doesn't include car expenses or attraction tickets and tours. What do you think of that amount?
Oh, boy. Depending on where you want to go, it sounds reasonable, but it also sounds like, depending on how you like to travel, it might not go all that far, right? I mean, I just booked a rental car. I'm getting on a plane for the first time in a long time to go to Florida to celebrate a friend's birthday. And the plane tickets were incredibly reasonable. And even when I changed them, they were still reasonable because the airlines are waiving the change fees. But the rental car in and of itself cost twice as much as airline tickets for me and my husband together.
Whoa. Yeah, I guess it depends on timing. A lot of this depends on what's going on at the moment. Now, there's something called the 50-20-30 rule, which I followed. It's a money management technique. It divides your budget into three categories: 50% for essentials, 20% for savings, and 30% for everything else, including travel. Do you think that's a good idea? I've been doing it kind of informally most of my life. It varies, but what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think it depends what you prioritize in your life, right? That 30% for everything else is a very, very big bucket. And I do think this method of budgeting works, but whether your 30% goes all in on things like travel, or whether you've spent a lot of the pandemic redoing your house, maybe improving certain rooms, or maybe you're an exercise buff and that 30% is going toward classes or a piece of exercise equipment. I mean, my take on budgeting is that once you've actually ticked off those first two buckets, once you have made sure that your bills are paid, that those essentials are covered, and once you've saved, I don't really care what you do with the rest, quite frankly, but you should care. And you should be really intentional about how you spend that money. And so if travel is the priority, well, then be smart about that travel. Make sure that you've planned it out. Make sure that you have booked your trips in advance as far as you can so that you can snag the best prices. Make sure that you've done your research and your homework, and understand that if travel is where you want to spend your money, then it means that you're going to compromise on other things.
Absolutely. Some people want to go shopping no matter what, and they prioritize it, and they'll eat at a less expensive restaurant or whatever to make sure they can do that. So I've always said prioritize when you go, and if you have a certain amount of money, you'll decide yourself where you want to spend it. But don't not go because you don't think you have enough. Just work it out.
Exactly. I mean, I remember growing up, and my father was a college professor. My mother was with us at home much of the time. She was a substitute teacher. We certainly had enough money, but didn't live a lavish lifestyle. But my father, being a college professor, afforded us the opportunity to take long trips during the summer. And so I remember going across the country with my parents and my brothers, sitting in the back of our Ford station wagon as we drove from our home in Indiana at the time, all the way out to California and around, and really spent months traveling, which was amazing. It gave us a chance to visit all the national parks and see parts of the country that many children never got to experience. I also remember lunches were not out. They were not at, even a fast food place. We would stop at a grocery store. My mom would buy a loaf of bread and a pack of bologna, and we would have sandwiches, and that was fine, right?
Yes.
They made choices about how to spend their limited resources.
Well, the idea of national parks, for example, is one of the best because that is one of the best bargains of travel, without question. The idea of eating responsibly, I would say, is a great one. I think many people, when they go to a hotel and they go to the breakfast buffet, they'll eat all of it. They'll eat more than they normally would and skip lunch. Some people even try to get a few rolls out and make that lunch. I've
Yeah.
been with people who have taken a whole bunch of stuff. They bring a big purse and stuff it. It's not right, but we eat lunch off of it.
Yeah, and sometimes I think, if you are in a hotel that does have a floor with a hospitality suite, it often doesn't cost that much more to book a room with access to that hospitality suite. You can eat breakfast there, you can grab snacks there. It's often as much of a money saver as it is an extra cost.
That's
And I've found that's a really good way to save.
excellent tip. I've done that many times where I've been tired and I've made the snacks my dinner.
Yep.
And it's been excellent. And it's easy and you can just walk right over to your room and go to sleep. So much, much more cost efficient than room service in the long run if you do it that way. How about some other general tips?
So right now, I think it's a very good time to talk about using our miles, right? If you've been home during the pandemic, shopping on Amazon, like so many people have, or other places, maybe you have accumulated a lot of frequent flyer points or frequent flyer miles. You're going to want to look into using them. They're expected to not be worth as much in years that follow as they are now. They're a currency that is likely going to devalue. So I'd say that when you start traveling again, you get the typically best bang for the buck when it comes to these points. If you use them for flights, don't use them for inexpensive flights, use them for the pricier flights. Look at using them for hotel rooms as well. You can sometimes get pretty good deals by transferring points to hotel partners. That would be one of the things I would suggest. A second thing right now is I wouldn't be skimping by buying the tickets with the least bells and whistles. As I've started to travel again, I've been pretty conscious of trying to make sure that I buy tickets that have some flexibility for cancellations, for changes. They are a little bit more expensive, but if you have to cancel, if you have to change, you're going to put yourself in a much, much better position. And then when it comes to both hotels and plane tickets, make sure that you understand what all the ancillary fees are. My husband and I moved recently to Philadelphia, and we've been coming in and out of New York every once in a while and just grabbing a hotel. But you can easily add $40, $50 a night to the cost of a hotel just in resort fees, even for a place that has absolutely nothing resort-like about it.
And if you don't need the resort amenities, don't go to those hotels. You're paying for that when you go to them.
Yeah, no, you're 100% right. And think about things like, how many bags are you actually going to pack? How many bags are you actually going to take? Do you care about where you sit on the plane? All of these things will start to add up as you start to layer them on.
I would just add, try to pack so that you don't have extra luggage costs. Today, there are so many extra costs, as you said. So I try to keep my weight on my luggage balanced between 2 or 3 bags, which I never thought of much before, but now they're much more careful about that. So you save money there. And I do think now is the time to book for 2022, because there will be a tremendous pent up desire by millions of people to travel. And if you're a little ahead of the game and you're willing to book now, you will probably save money over the long run. I also would think of travel insurance. You were mentioning the difficulties in, maybe a flight would be changed or something. I think even if you don't normally take travel insurance, this is probably a good time to think about that, to save yourself a big fee later.
I agree. And my theory on travel insurance is I've always taken it for the big trips, right? I mean, and my rule on insurance is that if something is going to be difficult for you to replace, right, then you insure it. And that is true of a car, it's true of a house, and it's true of a trip. If it's easy for you to just spend another couple $100 or whatever to replace a plane ticket, then maybe you skip the travel insurance in that case. But I do think right now is a good time. You just have to make sure that if you're going to buy it, now is one of the times that you want to buy cancel for any reason coverage.
Absolutely.
You don't want to hem yourself in with a lot of red print.
True. And I've been on trips with people who did not get travel insurance, where their spouse or partner had to be helicoptered out. I think it cost like $500,000, and I don't know what they did. It was a horrendous thing. So if you are maybe a little bit older, or you feel it might be something that would be a problem, I definitely would consider it. Just go on the safe side for this one, because if it's not a good idea, if something happens to you, it's just not worth it. So I think in the long run, you save money there. You save yourself from bankruptcy sometimes.
Yeah. And the other thing to look at is what you already have from your credit card companies. If you pay a lot of money for a top tier travel credit card, a Amex Platinum, a Chase Reserve, the cards that cost you hundreds of dollars a year just to keep them in your wallet, they often come with the sort of things that will benefit you in these situations too. So look at what those benefit packages are so that you're not paying twice.
Yeah, and sometimes we forget about that. We have them in our wallets, and we don't think about them all the time. And we find out later we could have saved money if we had checked. What else? Anything else? I think traveling slower, the slow travel movement is a big thing now. Just by doing that, you save money because you don't have to travel all over the place. You can stay in one place. And one of the biggest costs of travel is the transportation. So instead of going to 5 cities, maybe consider just staying in 1 or 2 and just settling in. You will not only save money, you'll get to know the place better. And that's something I like all the time. I love the slow travel movement, the slow eating movement.
I've actually never heard of the slow travel movement, but I think I am a slow traveler. I think of the trips that I've taken to Europe, the most recent ones, and we always try to hit, 1 or 2, maybe 3 at the most cities, but never more than that.
That's a very good idea. You're a natural traveler if you think that way. Many people try very hard. I don't know if they feel they'll never be back, or they just want to add countries, whatever it is. They'll move around so much that they hardly really understand what they're seeing. And then they also spend more money by doing so. Most of us will go back if we prioritize it. So we shouldn't feel so desperate to move around so much. And the slow travel movement started in the 80s, I think, in Italy. And
Wow. Of course it did. Right.
of course. And who would mind staying in a village in Italy for a long time and eating delicious food and so forth? What else? Let's see, some other ideas. How about phone charges? What are your comments on that? Because that can really, really set you back.
Phone charges.
Yes, your phone when you're overseas.
You want to call your cell carrier before you leave, usually they will tell you that they have some sort of a plan that at a reasonable rate you can elect to temporarily put on your own phone in order to make calls, send texts, do whatever you need to do from abroad. You may need an additional SIM card in order to do it, so make sure you get all of the details. But that's what we've done when we have traveled, and it's worked out just fine.
I remember I was on a trip once with a woman who was having a fight with her daughter, and she forgot about her phone charges. And I think she had a $700 fight.
Oh my
It was
goodness.
just awful. She had to, argue, and I think she got it down to half. But you really have to watch the phone. It's something that I have found over the years can trip you up. So if
Yeah,
you're
and the voice over internet protocol, the VoIP apps can be very, very helpful in this case. If you don't want to deal with a phone service, you can just go on Wi-Fi. You can use an app like WhatsApp and use that to make your calls.
Absolutely. I've been doing that with my granddaughter. It's amazing. It's just, a marvel. We're in Bosnia and Miami, and just whenever we want to talk, it's free. It's just great. Let's see. How about public transport versus Uber? And Uber is a
Oh,
kind of public transport. What do you think about that in saving money?
I'm a big proponent of trying to live as locally as possible when you are in a foreign location. I think you should explore public transportation. I think you should, of course, I always sort of rely on the people at my hotel and do some reading in advance to make sure I'm not venturing into unsafe territory. No, I think this is how you get to learn about a place by taking the tube or taking the metro or whatever the local form of transportation.
Tuk-tuk.
Buses.
Tuk-tuks.
Yeah.
I love them.
Buses are often wonderful. Whatever they happen to be.
I think, meeting locals, I met most of them on public transportation. You talk, you stand there, you know that you're speaking whatever English in my case, and other people want to speak with you, and it's lovely. It's a great way to feel you're in a place, not just in a tour bus or, in a cab. I mean, if you can take a cab sometimes at night and so forth, if you're, especially if you're alone, it's a good idea. But I think generally walking is from me the
Yeah.
favorite. I just
Me too.
love it.
Me too. Me
Yeah.
too. I do tend to splurge and take an Uber or a taxi from the airport while I'm dealing with A, luggage, and B, jet lag. Right. And so that's something that we often will tend to do.
You mix it up. I think that
Yeah.
again, you prioritize your time versus your, cost. It's always a priority there, one or the other, and often comfort is the priority. About airline tickets, I mean, I think it's important that timing is thought about. I mean, you can fly midweek, it's usually less. Is that correct? Off season, certainly.
I think it can be, yeah. Off season certainly is less. You should explore airports other than the main airport, right? If you're flying into New York, don't just type that you want to go to LaGuardia. Type that you want to go to New York City into the browser. Let it explore for you all the different airport choices, because sometimes going to Stewart Airport or Newark or another one will result in a less expensive sort of a fare.
Absolutely. That's a good tip. I think very often, for example, Heathrow and Gatwick, I just had a situation where I had to choose between them. And again, Gatwick is a little bit outside of London, more, but it's a lot less. And Heathrow is notoriously difficult to get through anyway.
Well, yeah. And I also think, and this is just my personal opinion at this point, although I think I've seen it certain places. If you can get yourself up and get on the first flight of the morning, now is the time when you should be doing that. Because with the rerouting of planes and getting planes into place and how things can get messed up during the day, you're just better off knowing that your plane is going to be there and that it's going to go.
I agree with you. And besides that, you get more time wherever you're going, which is always the precious thing. Time is the most precious of all. So that gives you a whole day, perhaps, if you get there in the morning, whereas if you get there in the afternoon, you're tired and so forth. Great idea. How about people who really want to get on a budget? They want to go for almost free. There's some ways to go nearly free, even in 2021. Do you know of some?
Well, first of all, you should explore using your miles and your points, right? If you've just been racking them up, now is a great time to start to use them and think about you can really pay for almost a whole trip that way. Um, but then I think you get creative. My son, who is a new dog owner, was telling me about a new service that he's using or is thinking of using in Los Angeles, where instead of hiring somebody to pet sit for you, you let somebody use your apartment and they take care of your dog. So it's kind of
Yes.
like a combo of Airbnb and a dog walking service or a pet sitting service. But the person who's coming in not only gets the company of a wonderful pet, they also get to stay for free. I
It's
mean, that
perfect.
sort of sounds like a win-win. It's a little
It
like
does.
house swapping used to be, except you're pet sitting. One of my other favorites, so I have a very good friend who is a wonderful artist. She's not a professional artist, but she is definitely serviceable and she's got an incredible bubbly personality. She's off on a cruise and she cruises for free because she teaches art classes on the cruise ships, and she gets to take an assistant with her the assistant does not have to be a trained artist. She takes a friend who has just, learned what it means to assist in an art class and clean out the brushes and set up the easels. And so I think there are lots of hacks, right? You just have to take your skills and try to figure it out.
Exactly. There's a work exchange platform called Workaway. There are others as well. You can look at those and get ideas. You can always be a house sitter, as we sort of discussed, or a pet sitter. Nowadays you can sit for plants or whatever. You can do many things. You can also swap your skills for room and board. Some people, freelance and they offer their skills in exchange for lodging in independently owned hotels that don't have a marketing budget. I know some people who do that. So it takes a little time and a little research, but you can probably find a way to really cut your costs if you really think about it. I know that sometimes I have volunteered when there's a chance to get bumped. What do you think about that?
If you've got the time, right? I mean, that's what we're doing, right? We're always sort of trading time for money. And if you've got the time to do that, I think why not?
Be sure to carry on only. That's one of the things. If you think you might do this, you're going to have to carry on. Otherwise, you're not going to see your luggage. Probably it's going to get messed up. So that if you have this in mind, and some people do, they travel over holidays like Christmas, and they know they'll get a chance to get bumped, so they prepare by taking carry on, and then they're bumped, and they get a voucher, and they get a free flight and a later flight. So it works for them. It's
Yeah,
another way to save money.
absolutely.
Now, there's some destinations in the world that are less expensive than others. I've traveled to over 100 countries, and I've noticed that many in Southeast Asia and Central America, South America, Africa are fabulous destinations, but they're also quite reasonable. And I have read that you can go for as little as $30 a day if you really want to go basic in some of these places. If you stay in a hostel, you eat locally. If you have a little bit more money, you can up it. But some of the countries that I've listed that I have noticed this is Vietnam, Costa Rica, Bulgaria, Mexico, Thailand, Taiwan, Indonesia, Nepal, Morocco, Nicaragua, and in the United States, as we mentioned, national parks, not Central Park, are very great bargains for families, just as you were talking about. How about in Europe? Have you noticed any countries there that you feel your dollar goes a little further?
Oh boy. I haven't been to Europe like many people in a couple of years, so I haven't been paying complete and total attention to where my dollar's going further there at this point.
Well, it's not going to be Paris, I will tell you,
No, no, it's not.
or any big
It's
city.
never Paris.
No, never, but it's worth it anyway, I think. But anyway, there are countries that are not as well known, the ones that you'd think, of course, Slovenia, Slovakia, the Czech Republic, Italy, some parts, the southern part of Italy is less expensive, way south. And Croatia, Turkey, these are still countries where you can get a good deal. In Greece, which you would think would be expensive, I had a wonderful vacation using ferry boats. I didn't take a cruise. I used ferries the way the locals do because there are ferries to all the out islands. It was one of the best trips I ever took. could eat on tavernas on the harbor. It was extremely inexpensive. You could go to little places and check them out on the harbor. They let you see them first. And do recommend Greece, if you're willing to take ferry boats, can be a great deal. Have you done that? Have you been to Greece?
I have been to Greece. I haven't been for, gosh, it's been 15 years. But we did a combo of taking ferries to get to some islands. And actually, I think we took ferries all around. I don't think we flew within Greece.
No.
I'm not a lover of small planes.
No, I'm not either. And besides, you get to meet the people. There's your public transportation.
Exactly.
Ferries. It's not only a cruise, you get to meet everyone. It's a wonderful way to get around certain parts of the world, and Greece is one of them. So what about some of your other trips that you remember with great fondness?
Oh boy, we had a wonderful trip to Israel, my husband and I, about 4 years ago, where we spent some time in Tel Aviv, we spent some time in Jerusalem, we spent some time on a kibbutz. So that was
such
really
energy there. Didn't you
interesting.
feel the energy was fantastic?
Oh, it was fantastic.
You
It was
really feel it.
fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the food used to be terrible. I remember I was there in the 1970s. It was horrible. And now I think it's the best breakfast. Talk about a
Oh my
buffet where you
gosh.
could eat your whole day.
Yeah. Yeah. Israeli breakfast. If you're a salad lover, that's this like dirty little secret of Israeli breakfast. It's so much salad. It's
good for you.
It is. It's great for you. And it's also salad, but there's no lack of bread either. And
no lack of anything.
So that was an amazing trip. We had a wonderful time in Japan about 2 years ago, right before the pandemic. We went to Japan and spent some time in Tokyo, some time in Kyoto. Kyoto was just beautiful.
Did you go to the bamboo forest?
Did.
Yes,
yeah. We went to the bamboo forest. I mean, some of my favorite trips have really been in the United States, driving the coast in California from LA to San Francisco, stopping in Big Sur.
We just did a whole episode on that wonderful, wonderful drive. It's one of the best in the world.
Amazing.
Beautiful. We always ask our guests to end the podcast with a special travel memory. So, Jean, what is yours?
Boy, there are so many special.
We can take more than one.
No, the one I was thinking about was a meal at a restaurant in San Francisco called the Zuni Cafe, which is famous for its roast chicken, which they serve on top of a salad that it's kind of a panzanella. It's a green salad, but it has big croutons in it that's made from sort of a sourdough loaf and some raisins or currants in the salad. Go to the New York Times and you search for the Zuni Cafe chicken. They have actually published the recipe. And so now you can make it at home. And it's where my husband and I celebrated buying a house. We've celebrated other things there. And it's just a special place for us.
It's interesting how memories can be a sight or a memory of a family or a delicious meal. That's what's so wonderful about travel. Whatever it may be, you will remember it and you will love it the rest of your life. It's a great investment. Travel is an investment in memory. So I thank you for that. That's a very interesting thing. I can think of many meals myself, some of them deliciously decadent and some of them just simple picnics on the side of a road. Mm-hmm. So you're bringing memories to me as well. Well, thank you so very much, Jean Chatzky, for sharing your expertise on budgeting and your special travel memories with us. You can find out more at her website, jeanchatzky.com, and on Twitter at Jean Chatzky. So here's to more travels, whatever our budget.
Thank you so much, Lea.
Thank you. Thanks for listening to our award-winning podcast. We've recorded over 100 episodes of Places I Remember, so follow us on any podcast app. And new monthly episodes are also on YouTube with gorgeous video. My book, Places I Remember, is available in print and Kindle, and I read the audio version. Follow my travel writing at Forbes.com. Contact me at the links in the show notes or on my website, placesiremember, lealane.com, and keep making your own travel memories.